You work, you pay rent. So where does that money go? Not to a landlord down the street, not anymore. After 2008, firms like Blackstone bought hundreds of thousands of foreclosed homes, and a single software company now stands accused by the Department of Justice of helping landlords coordinate your rent. It keeps going up. The people collecting the money are counting on you never learning who they are. In 2008, the ground fell out from under the American housing market. As mortgages went unpaid and jobs vanished, banks repossessed millions of homes, from small bungalows to entire blocks. By 2009, more than 3 million families had lost their homes to foreclosure in a single year, a record that would only grow. These empty houses did not return to the market for new owners. Instead, they piled up on bank balance sheets, labeled as real estate owned, or REO, a technical term for homes the banks never wanted to hold. Banks found themselves accidental landlords sitting on stockpiles of foreclosed properties. They had no interest in managing repairs, mowing lawns, or collecting rent. These homes sat vacant, sometimes for months, dragging down neighborhoods and property values. The usual buyers, families looking for a first home, could not get loans. Credit was tight, and the dream of homeownership slipped further out of reach for millions. With every auction that failed to attract a local buyer, the inventory grew. By 2010, banks were desperate to unload these assets, often at steep discounts. In some cities, entire subdivisions were left half-finished or abandoned. The supply of distressed homes reached historic highs, especially in places like Atlanta, Phoenix, and Las Vegas. This glut created a rare opening. For the first time, thousands of single-family homes were available in bulk, and banks were willing to sell them to anyone with enough cash to take the problem off their hands. This was the moment the familiar idea of the local landlord began to fade, setting the stage for a new kind of owner, one whose priorities would be very different from the families who lost their homes. Blackstone saw an opportunity in the chaos. In 2012, it launched Invitation Homes, a company built to buy up foreclosed houses by the thousands. This was not the old model of a local landlord collecting rent to cover a mortgage. This was Wall Street money, private equity funds, and spreadsheets measuring every dollar of return. Invitation Homes became the face of a new system, snapping up properties in Atlanta, Phoenix, and Dallas, sometimes entire neighborhoods at once. Within a few years, 3 other firms, American Homes, For Rent, Progress Residential, and Tricon Residential, followed the same playbook. By 2022, these 4 companies together controlled over 228,000 single-family homes, more than the entire rental stock of some major cities. In Atlanta, a Federal Reserve study found that institutional investors extracted nearly $4 billion in home equity from Black neighborhoods from 2007 to 2016, often outbidding local families and flipping homes for profit. The scale of this takeover was staggering. Before the crash, no single investor owned more than 1,000 houses. By 2023, institutional portfolios had ballooned to hundreds of thousands of homes nationwide. In some Sunbelt neighborhoods, 1 in 4 rental houses now belongs to a corporate landlord. MetLife Investment Management forecasted that if current trends continue, institutional investors could own more than 40% of single-family rentals in some markets by 2030. The rules of the game had changed. Your rent was no longer set by a neighbor down the street, but by a company answering to shareholders and analysts. The logic was simple. Maximize returns, scale up, and treat homes as assets on a balance sheet. For millions of renters, this meant the person collecting the rent check was now a distant corporation, not a familiar face. Bulk auctions changed everything. In the years after the crash, government-backed giants like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac started selling off thousands of foreclosed homes, not one by one, but in massive bundles. These REO to rental auctions were never meant for families or small-time landlords. They required millions in cash, strict investor qualifications, and the capacity to manage hundreds of properties at once. The buyers were private equity funds, Wall Street firms, and corporate landlords, groups that had the capital and structure to scale up quickly. In 2012, Fannie Mae auctioned off entire pools of homes in Atlanta, Los Angeles, and Phoenix, with deals sometimes topping $1 billion. Banks, desperate to clean up their balance sheets, followed suit, offering discounts for bulk sales that locked out ordinary buyers. But the rules didn't just favor big money at the auction block. Local zoning laws kept many neighborhoods locked at low density, blocking new apartment construction and limiting supply. In cities across the country, it was illegal to build anything but single-family homes on most residential land. That meant the pool of available rentals stayed tight, even as demand soared. The combination of government policy, bank strategy, and local zoning built a system where scale was rewarded and competition was squeezed out. The ground was laid for a new kind of owner, one with the power to shape not just who rents, but how much you pay. A local landlord usually knows the names on the mailbox and fixes the leaky faucet themselves. They collect rent to cover a mortgage, maybe a little profit, and often live in the same city or even the same neighborhood. But when your landlord is a corporation, the rules change. The person you call about a broken heater might be in a call center states away. Repairs can take weeks or get lost in a ticketing system that treats your home like a line item. Corporate landlords answer to investors and quarterly earnings, not to the people living in their buildings. Their business model is built on return targets. Every property is expected to deliver a set percentage back to shareholders year after year. If profits dip, the solution is simple: raise the rent, cut maintenance costs, or file for eviction faster. Studies from Princeton's eviction lab and the NYU Furman Center show that corporate landlords file evictions at rates up to 50% higher than local owners. Maintenance complaints are more common too. A 2022 GAO report found that 70% of these companies manage their properties remotely, with no local staff on site. For tenants, the difference is felt in every late-night call that goes unanswered, every rent hike notice that arrives without warning, every repair that gets deferred. The logic is clear. Your home is now an asset, and your rent is a revenue stream managed by people who may never see your street, but who track your payments on a spreadsheet. RealPage sits at the heart of a system that quietly rewrote the rules for how your rent is set. Its software, YieldStar and AIRM, doesn't just crunch numbers. It pools confidential data from thousands of landlords, tracking every lease, every renewal, every vacancy across millions of apartments. When your building owner plugs their numbers into the system, RealPage's algorithm compares them to competitors, then spits out a price recommendation that is not based on what is fair, but on what will maximize returns for everyone in the pool. The result is rents moving upward together, even if no one in your city ever sits down to talk. One RealPage executive once admitted at a Nashville conference, when asked about double-digit rent hikes, that he thinks it is driving it quite honestly. In a ProPublica investigation, a developer who worked with the software put it more bluntly, saying leasing agents had too much empathy compared to computer-driven pricing. The Department of Justice and 8 state attorneys general filed an antitrust suit against RealPage in August 2024, calling the algorithm a smoky backroom, a place where competition is replaced by silent coordination. The case lays out how your rent is now set not by a neighbor or even a local manager, but by code designed to keep prices high and options scarce. For millions of renters, the math simply does not add up. Half of all renting households in America now spend more than 30% of their income on housing, what experts call being cost-burdened. More than 21 million households pay even more, sometimes over half their income, just to keep a roof overhead. That strain is not the result of personal failure or bad budgeting. It is the outcome of a system where your rent is treated as a revenue stream, not a basic cost of living. When you pay your rent each month, the money does not stop at the property manager's office. In the new model, it moves up the chain to asset managers, private equity funds, and ultimately to shareholders and investors who expect steady returns. The corporate landlord's goal is not to break even or cover a mortgage. It is to deliver a set percentage back to investors, quarter after quarter. If costs go up or if profits fall short, rents are raised to fill the gap. Algorithms like Real Pages make this process even more efficient, recommending the highest price the market can bear. As one Real Page executive admitted, "I think it is driving it quite honestly. The old idea of rent as a fair exchange for shelter has been replaced by a logic that asks how much can be extracted and how quickly can it flow upward." For renters, that means more of your paycheck is routed directly to distant investors, often leaving less for food, savings, or anything else. This is not an accident. It is a deliberate design, and it is why so many households now find themselves squeezed every month. Your rent is not rising by accident. It's rising because your building is now an asset traded by investors, priced by an algorithm, and justified by executives who admit that leasing agents had too much empathy. You are not behind, you are navigating math rewritten for Wall Street's gain, not your stability.